the double agent who changed the war. The message arrived exactly when the Germans expected it. It came from a man they believed was working for them. To the German intelligence officers listening on the other end, there was nothing unusual about it. Their agent was still alive, still operating, still watching the Americans, still sending information back to the Reich. There was only one problem. He was no longer their agent. Every word he transmitted was being watched. Every report was being controlled. And somewhere behind Allied lines, American intelligence officers were learning something extraordinary. They did not need to destroy the German spy network. They could use it. This was a different kind of war. There were no tanks advancing across fields, no bombers filling the sky, no artillery announcing that an attack had begun. There was only a radio, a message, and a question that could decide whether men lived or died. Would the Germans believe the lie? By 1944, the Office of Strategic Services had become something the United States had never possessed before. An organization capable of gathering intelligence, supporting resistance movements, conducting sabotage, analyzing enemy governments, and operating secret networks across occupied territory. But buried inside the OS, S was a division whose work was even more secretive. It was called X2. Its mission was counterintelligence. The men and women of X2 were not simply trying to discover German secrets. They were hunting the people trying to discover ours. German intelligence had spent years constructing networks throughout Europe. Agents crossed borders under false identities. Radio operators transmitted coded messages. Informants watched ports, railways, factories, troop movements, and military installations. The German Military Intelligence Service, the Abwehr, wanted to know where the Allies were going, what they were preparing, and most importantly, where they would strike next. For an ordinary intelligence service, finding an enemy spy presented a simple solution. Arrest him, interrogate him, remove him. X2 began considering something far more dangerous. What if the spy remained active? What if Berlin continued receiving his messages? What if the Germans never discovered that the man they trusted was now working under Allied control? The enemy's intelligence network could become a weapon pointed back at the enemy. The British had already demonstrated the extraordinary potential of controlled enemy agents, the OSS, learned from British counterintelligence experience and began developing its own double agent capabilities. The principle sounded simple. The reality was terrifying. A captured or recruited enemy agent would continue communicating with German intelligence. Some of the information he transmitted had to be true. Too many lies would expose him immediately. But the truth could be carefully selected. A train really had moved. A unit really had arrived. An airfield really existed. Small pieces of accurate information created credibility. And credibility made the larger deception possible. It was a strange equation. To make Germany believe the lie, sometimes the Allies first had to tell Germany the truth. Every message therefore became a calculation. What could the Germans safely know? What did they already know? What information would make the agent appear valuable? And what false conclusion did the Allies ultimately want German intelligence to reach? One mistake could destroy months of work. Worse, it could tell Germany that its intelligence network had been compromised. That meant the Americans had to think like the Germans. X2 officers studied enemy intelligence organizations, personalities, procedures, codes, communications, and recruiting methods. They tried to understand not only what German intelligence knew, but how German intelligence decided what to believe. That distinction mattered. A lie does not need to be perfect. It needs to fit what the person receiving it already expects to be true. By the time Allied armies entered France in 1944, German intelligence faced an enormous problem. Territory was disappearing. Communication networks were collapsing. Agents who had once operated behind Allied positions suddenly found themselves surrounded by advancing American, British, Canadian, and French forces. Some attempted to disappear, others tried to continue transmitting, and some were discovered. X2 now had an opportunity that would have seemed impossible only months earlier. Instead of merely capturing enemy intelligence personnel, American counterintelligence officers could attempt to turn parts of the German system against itself. These controlled enemy agents became pieces in an invisible battlefield. German officers sitting hundreds of miles away might believe they were receiving reports from loyal operatives. In reality, the information reaching them could be shaped by the Allies. Imagine the pressure on the man sitting beside the radio. The Germans knew his habits. They knew how he communicated. They might know details of his previous assignments. They could ask questions whose answers were already known in Berlin. They could deliberately insert tests into conversations. A wrong response could expose everything. There was another danger. The Americans could never be completely certain that a supposed double agent had actually changed sides. Perhaps he was pretending. Perhaps every conversation with the Americans was itself part of a German operation. That is the nightmare at the center of counterintelligence. A spy lies professionally. A double agent lies to the people who originally hired him. But what happens when nobody knows which side is receiving the real lie? X2 officers had to construct layers of verification. Information was compared. Stories were checked. Communications were monitored. Enemy responses could reveal whether reports were being believed. Slowly, patterns emerged. The Americans were no longer merely looking at individual spies. They were beginning to see the architecture behind them. Who recruited whom? Which radio frequencies were used? Where messages traveled? Which German officers controlled particular networks? Which operations mattered? And which agents Berlin trusted? That information was enormously valuable. Because once you understand an intelligence network, you do not necessarily need to destroy it. Sometimes it is more useful alive. A functioning enemy network under your control can tell you what the enemy wants to know. Every question becomes intelligence. If German headquarters suddenly begins demanding information about a particular port, that request itself reveals interest. If agents are asked about specific troop formations, perhaps Germany is worried about where those formations are moving. If Berlin repeatedly asks about aircraft or supplies in one region, the questions may expose German assumptions about the next Allied operation. The hunters have become the hunted without necessarily realizing it. And the Americans had entered one of the most psychologically complicated forms of warfare ever created. There was no dramatic moment when victory became obvious. Success looked like an ordinary radio transmission, a German acknowledgement, a request for more information, another message, another day without discovery. Every time Berlin responded normally, the deception survived. But keeping a double agent believable required patience. Suppose the Americans wanted Germany to believe that a major unit was somewhere it was not. Simply transmitting that claim might be suspicious. Instead, the deception could be constructed indirectly. An agent might report seeing certain vehicle markings. Later, another observation might suggest unusual rail traffic. Another message could mention officers arriving. Individually, none of these details proved anything. Together, they created a picture. And if that picture matched what German analysts already suspected, they might build the false conclusion themselves. That was the most powerful kind of deception. Not forcing the enemy to believe your story, giving him enough carefully selected pieces that he creates the story for you. The OSS-2 double agent program grew out of this philosophy. From 1944 into 1945, X-2 officers operating with advancing Allied forces recruited German stay-behind agents and turned some of them into control channels back to German intelligence. The OSS referred to such operatives as controlled enemy agents. Some communicated by wireless radio. The Germans thought they were looking through windows into Allied territory, but the Allies were increasingly deciding what could be seen through those windows. The implications went far beyond individual tactical reports. German intelligence had depended on human networks to understand Allied movements. If those networks could be penetrated, their reports could be manipulated. If the reports could be manipulated, German commanders could be encouraged to maintain incorrect assumptions. And during a war moving as quickly as the European campaign of 1944 and 1945, an incorrect assumption could become obsolete before anyone discovered the truth. Allied armies were advancing. German forces were retreating. Headquarters moved. Communication lines broke. Reliable intelligence became increasingly difficult to obtain. That made surviving agents more valuable and potentially more believable. The irony was brutal. The worse Germany's intelligence situation became, the more important a supposedly loyal agent could appear. And the more important that agent appeared, the more influence carefully controlled information might have. But X-2's work was not simply about sending false reports. Its deeper value was counterintelligence. The controlled agents helped reveal German espionage activity. Connections could be identified. German methods could be studied. Other operatives could be exposed. Enemy networks that once threatened Allied forces could be mapped from the inside. This is what made the operation so different from conventional combat. Destroy a tank and the enemy knows the tank is gone. Shoot down an aircraft and the enemy eventually realizes it has been lost. Capture a spy secretly and keep his radio alive. And the enemy may continue believing that nothing has changed. That delay between reality and perception becomes the weapon. By late 1944, the war in Western Europe was entering a brutal new phase. Paris had been liberated. Allied forces were approaching Germany. But victory was not guaranteed to arrive quickly. German resistance remained fierce. The Battle of the Bulge would demonstrate just how dangerous German forces could still be. Intelligence mattered enormously. Every bridge, every division, every supply route, every rumor of movement. Behind the enormous armies advancing toward Germany was another conflict that most soldiers never saw. X-2 personnel followed the Allied advance into liberated territory. Their battlefield was made of abandoned offices, captured documents, interrogations, radio sets, names written in notebooks, suspicious identities, and enemy agents left behind as the front moved east. A German operative could be more valuable than an abandoned weapon. A radio frequency could reveal more than a captured truck. A name could unlock an entire network. The goal was not glory. The goal was knowledge. And sometimes, control. There is a reason these operations remain difficult to dramatize accurately. Counterintelligence rarely provides the clean certainty of a battlefield. Everyone has a cover story. Every source has a motive. Every piece of intelligence may be genuine, mistaken, manipulated, or deliberately planted. Imagine receiving a report from an enemy agent who claims he wants to cooperate. He gives you 3 pieces of information. 2 are verified. The third cannot be checked. Is the third also true? Or were the first 2 truths deliberately offered so you would believe the lie? Now reverse the situation. That is exactly what you are trying to do to the Germans. Espionage becomes a hall of mirrors. And somewhere inside that maze, people still have to make decisions. X-2 officers understood that counterintelligence was not simply about catching spies. It was about understanding deception itself. The division benefited enormously from cooperation with British intelligence. which had years of experience studying and controlling German espionage networks. This collaboration gave American officers access to techniques, information, and a broader picture of German intelligence operations. The OSS was young. It had only been established in 1942. Yet, in a remarkably short period, it developed capabilities that would influence American intelligence long after the war ended. And this is where the story becomes larger than any single double agent. There was not one mysterious operative who single-handedly changed the war. Reality was more interesting. There was a system. Multiple controlled enemy agents, case officers, radio operators, analysts, interrogators, counterintelligence specialists, British partners, captured documents, enemy communications. Thousands of tiny fragments that, when combined, allowed the Allies to see portions of German espionage from the inside. That distinction matters, because history often remembers intelligence through famous names. The glamorous spy, the daring infiltrator, the agent with the impossible mission. But successful counterintelligence frequently works because dozens of people nobody remembers perform their jobs correctly. The person checking a report, the officer comparing two names, the radio specialist noticing an irregular transmission, the analyst recognizing that two apparently unrelated agents report to the same German controller. None of these moments look dramatic. Together, they can dismantle an intelligence service. By 1945, Germany's position was collapsing. Allied forces crossed into German territory. Soviet armies advanced from the east. Cities were devastated. Fuel was disappearing. Transportation networks were breaking down. And German intelligence organizations were themselves being reorganized, absorbed, fragmented, or destroyed. Yet, even during those final months, information remained valuable. A war can be almost lost and still kill enormous numbers of people. Every day mattered. Every wrong deployment mattered. Every misunderstanding mattered. The double agent operations of X2 contributed to a broader Allied counterintelligence effort that reduced Germany's ability to operate effectively behind Allied lines and provided insight into the Abwehr's espionage system. The achievement was not that one false message ended the war. History rarely works that neatly. The achievement was that an enemy intelligence mechanism could be penetrated, studied, and in some cases controlled. The Germans had created agents to look inside Allied territory. The Allies found ways to look back through them, and sometimes to change what Germany saw. Then the war ended. Germany surrendered in May 1945. The radios went silent, networks disappeared, files were closed, and the organization responsible for these operations faced an uncertain future of its own. The Office of Strategic Services had existed for only a few years. In September 1945, it was dissolved. Parts of its intelligence functions survived in successor organizations, and its institutional legacy eventually flowed into the Central Intelligence Agency, created in 1947. But the ideas developed during those wartime experiments did not disappear. Counterintelligence, controlled agents, deception, penetrating hostile intelligence networks, understanding not simply what an enemy knows, but what he believes. These concepts would become fundamental to the intelligence struggles of the Cold War. And many of the people involved carried their wartime experience into the new world that followed. Perhaps that is the strangest legacy of the double agent. His greatest weapon was not a pistol. It was credibility. The Germans had to believe that the person on the other end of the radio was still theirs. As long as they believed that, the connection remained alive. And every time they listened, they exposed something about themselves. What they feared, what they wanted to know, what they expected to happen, what they were prepared to believe. The radio was not merely transmitting information. It was transmitting trust. And trust, once captured, became intelligence. So when we ask who the double agent was who changed the war, perhaps we are asking the wrong question. There was no single man behind the entire story. There were agents whose identities, operations, and circumstances differed. There were OSS officers whose names would never become famous. There were British intelligence specialists whose earlier experience helped shape American methods. There were analysts working far from the front. Together, they discovered something that would define espionage for generations. Sometimes the most valuable enemy spy is the one the enemy never realizes he has lost. A captured spy can tell you what he knew yesterday. A controlled spy can influence what the enemy believes tomorrow. That difference changed intelligence warfare. And when the guns finally fell silent across Europe, the lesson remained. Wars are fought with soldiers. They are fought with aircraft. They are fought with ships, tanks, factories, and ammunition. But somewhere behind all of them is information. Who knows what? Who believes what? And who can make the other side believe something that is not true? The men and women of X2 fought that invisible war. Most Americans never knew their names. German intelligence officers often never knew they were fighting them. That was precisely the point. Because the perfect counterintelligence operation does not end with the enemy discovering how he was deceived. It ends with him never realizing that the person he trusted had already changed sides. If stories like this deserve to be remembered, subscribe to Echoes of Valor, leave a like, and tell us in the comments. Could you trust a double agent if thousands of lives depended on his next message? And join us for the next episode of the OSS Files, where another hidden chapter of World War II comes out of the shadows. Their courage changed history. Their stories deserve to be remembered.